Okay, so hello. Welcome to the end of week one and the transition to week two. One thing that I would like to do this term is to kind of have the summary video transition to talk back through, some of the previous week and into the next week. And I want to do this for a few reasons. One is I don't always get into the forums as much as I'd like to, and I honestly don't even believe it's really good for me to be in there dominating the discussion forums. I think that the conversations are best driven by students, and when the teacher takes over, students tend to sit back and wait for that to happen. So I tend to lurk a little bit more, and I also know that sometimes, I'll just be honest, I know that sometimes a couple days will just get by me, especially like this last week. I had some travel fiascos. I was down in Brownsville, Texas, visiting a college and doing an assessment, and just coming back, it was just one of those things where, this flight didn't go through, this flight didn't connect. Okay, we're going to send you to Chicago instead of sending you to Milwaukee, but we're still going to send your suitcase to Milwaukee just for fun. So that's kind of how my life goes sometimes. So what I want to do right now is I want to stop. I want to reflect back on week one, particularly the week one, some of the things about the discussion. And then I want to look forward into week two and talk about the week two. And in order to do that, I kind of want you to understand my lens into higher education and why I enjoy this course and why this is a course that I teach. So I used to be just an adjunct college instructor. I taught IT courses. I taught A+ hardware, software, networking, server installation, and all that other fun IT related stuff. Before that, I was actually a grade school principal. So I've gone through iterations of in my career. And after my adjunct, I gradually worked my way back into administration, and I was supervising online instruction for a large for-profit college. Went from that, and I got into the company that I work for now, Ellucian. We do a lot of higher ed back-end IT tech support. If you use Banner or Colleague or any student information systems, that all belongs to us. It's our software. But I work in the academic department and academic consulting. And sometimes my job is just as simple as I'm building online courses for clients, and I'm working with their professors to help them build their courses. And sometimes my job is a little bit more in depth. So, for example, this past 2 weeks actually, I was asked very quickly to show up at a college in Texas. Their LMS administrator quit. And his last day was Friday, and the start of their term was Monday. So all of a sudden, you've got nobody to support they use Canvas, not Blackboard, but they had nobody to support Canvas. And so the immediate reason that I was out there was to just jump in, learn what he was doing, and fill his shoes for a couple weeks. But it was also to kind of be a fly on the wall and to listen to what's going on the campus, to evaluate and assess their policies and their practices, and to decide if there were some larger underlying issues that needed to be resolved. In other words, an LMS administrator usually doesn't just quit right before the first week of the term. There's usually something beneath the surface. And in this case, there certainly was. There were issues beneath the surface. Some of it were related to policy and a lack of policy to govern certain areas. Some of it had to do with positions that were misaligned, people that were doing jobs that were not quite their skill set out of necessity, rather than doing the job that they were hired to do that made them discontent. Some of it was personalities. There happened to be one leadership position with a person that, for whatever reason, let's just say was not getting along well with others and had alienated a number of people. And then and some of it had to do with process. Just, why are you guys doing this in this backward means of doing things? If you stop doing it this way, restructure it, and start doing things this way, then there's going to be much better flow. We're going to allocate resources better. So that's exactly, really, honestly, what a consultant does. Just comes in, assesses, looks objectively, and shares that honest feedback. And in my case, also will stay engaged to help them put in the proper policies and processes in order to be effective and realign with their institutional goals. So that being said, you would be correct in thinking that I interact with a large cross-section of a college or university. I intersect with everyone from the students to the faculty to the admissions, the support staff, to the dean, to the vice president of academic affairs, to the CIO, to the president of the institution, or sometimes the chancellor themselves. It's really, for me, is a great job. I love it because I always learn something every time I go to a new site, and then I learn something usually that I can take with me to the next site. But it also, that's why this is a course that really interests me, because, studying these things helps me keep my broad lens on I can tell you how these things apply, let's put it that way, in a number of different institutions. So let's take a look at week one. Real quickly, I'm going to just kind of go back. I'm going to refer back on my other screen here to the discussion forum. So you're the head of an academic unit. You need to have a mission consistent with setting goals and direction. So what are the factors you consider, and what processes would you use to develop a mission statement for the unit? So right away, the most obvious thing in the world to me is that you're going to start with a mission statement of the institution. Before I apply for a college or university, or if I'm applying for a new job, or before I visit a college or university, I have to understand their mission. And I'll say MVO, you'll hear me use that term a bit in this course, the mission, vision, objectives. A lot of times that'll be on a web page or something on their institution. And if there's something that's going wrong or something that's out of whack at a college and it's not functioning properly, the first thing I'll do is I'll look at their MVO. And usually what I'll find is what they're doing doesn't align with what their MVO says that they're going to do. So that'll be the first thing that I call attention to. And I might, if they have an issue with accessibility and their content in their online courses is not openly accessible to students with disabilities, and they'll say, yeah, really, that's not a high priority for us, or it's not our job, or whatever. First of all, that's not true. But if that is the feeling of leadership, then I will point them to their MVO, and I'll say, that's funny, because your mission, vision, objectives say that one of your priorities is to offer, academics or solutions or opportunities to people who otherwise are marginalized or don't always have the access to the mainstream of education. And if that's the case, then why isn't this your priority? And I've actually gone so far as to delve into bad practices at a college and have them stop and realize we need to realign and rewrite something in our overarching mission, because we're missing something that is important to us. So not just to know what the college's mission, vision, objectives are, but also to ensure that your college has like a refresh, right? They have a scheduled set way of saying, this is how often we reevaluate our MVO and make sure that it truly reflects who we are and what we believe. Departmental MVO must align with college MVO, and it's really just that simple. So that's the first thing that I'm going to do, is I'm going to do an exercise with my team and say, let's take a look at the college or the institutional MVO, and let's read it in the lens of our department, and let's say, what does each item in the MVO mean for our department? And if we rewrote this objective and wrote it more specifically to our department, how would we write it? And what would we say? How does it apply? Essential characteristics that are needed to lead an institution of higher education in the 21st century, and relating to your preferred management style and principles, that's obviously a very personal answer. If you have never done a Myers-Briggs personality assessment, that's one that I think is particularly helpful, and I think we did some with that if you had the organizational leadership course. You may have taken that or done that somewhere else. It really drives down what your personal leadership or interaction style is, right? I happen to know mine is an ISTJ, and an ISTJ is a person who is very, very analytical, which makes me good for my position. It's a person who is able to divorce from himself emotions and feelings from observations and from decision making. It's an ability to really be very dispassionate. And so being aware of that for myself, I know that one of my character flaws, if you will, is in dealing with people or circumstances or institution where things are highly emotionally charged. I'm not always the best person Because in a highly emotionally charged situation, people want someone who's going to understand and who's going to, acknowledge that they have these feelings and that the feelings actually kind of matter. Whereas my personality type would be something more along the lines of saying, your feelings really don't matter, and your feelings about what's the best way to do things or to move forward are inaccurate, actually. So let's forget about your feelings and let's go do things this way. So being mindful of my personality type, I know when sometimes I have to bite my tongue, or sometimes I have to try to be a little bit more compassionate, if you will, in bringing about change, or in recognizing that, even if feelings are, emotional, even if a situation is emotionally charged, those feelings, even if you don't agree with them, have to at least be validated, and they have to at least be acknowledged. And that's not my strong suit. So look at your personality type. Right now in higher education, we're undergoing, the information revolution, and that has caught higher education off guard for the last 25 years. This is a field that has been static for a century, and able to operate in a bubble for a century, and all of a sudden is thrust into the information age and is forced to react. And it takes discernment to recognize what in the information age are trends that we can wait out because they're going to pass. And we also have to be perceptive enough to realize that some things are not trends, some things are the new reality. So it takes patience and discernment and the ability to then jump and move quickly when decisions are made, to catch yourself on the forefront of those changes. Like take MOOCs, for example. If you're not aware of what a MOOC is, MOOC, you might want to look it up. This was something that came up a few years ago. Downs and Siemens were the two gentlemen who came up with, Stephen Downs and Siemens, Greg Siemens, came up with this idea of a massively open online course. And it would be like this huge course that thousands of people could take, and it's going to transform the world of higher education. And some institutions went all in and said, yes, MOOCs are the wave of the future. We're going to put a lot of time and effort into developing this because this is how it's all going to be from now on. And to be blunt, they were wrong. Okay, it was not thought through, and that was not the original intent of MOOCs. Higher education, for lack of a better word, tried to bastardize MOOCs into a large online course, and that's not what they were meant to be. So that's just an example of a trend that some identified as being the wave of the future and put too much stock and too much effort into, and others were patient. And actually, I talked to the guys that developed the first MOOC. I was going to write my doctoral thesis on MOOCs, and I had a Skype chat with them, and they said, you know what I was told, like, by the guys themselves? They said, MOOCs are not the story. MOOCs are not important. Don't write about MOOCs. These are the guys that invented the first MOOC. They said, that's not important. They said, what's important is the underlying trend. What is important is the way that today's learner learns and how they want to connect. And they actually developed their, a learning theory, which is, an adaptation of older learning theories, but they call it connectivism. And that is the important trend, is that connectivity that students want. So when it comes to those essential characteristics in the 21st century, be aware of your personal management styles, but then also be aware that you are in unstable ground, right? You're in a shifting, changing landscape. And the best advice I'd ever gotten from someone that I'm still digesting when it comes to leading in this field is to move fast, slowly. So at that point, all right, I'm going to stop and I'm going to move forward now. And I want to talk about just the chapter or week 2 topics, just a little bit about being mission driven and focused on core values and democratic ideas. So the first thing, I already kind of gave you my little sermonette about mission, vision, objectives, and the importance of being mission driven, right? If you're not paying attention to your mission, if you're not focused on your mission, you're never going to be able to know who or what your institution is. You're never going to be able to evaluate your institution's success, because how are you going to measure that success? it should be measured by, are we reaching our institutional objectives? And that means that those institutional objectives have to be measurable and actionable. So I'm going to just, when I talk now about what we're talking about week 2, I'm talking about shared governance and higher education. I'm going to expand on that just a little bit. Shared governance, democratic partnerships. So what I want you to think about right now is, with whatever institution you're involved with the most, like if you work with a college or a university, or if you attend a college or a university, I want you to think and ask yourself, where does the power lie in this institution? And what is the balance of power in this institution? Who are the decision makers, and who has the authority to override or is run over by those decisions? So anytime that I set foot on a new campus that I've not been to before, and there's some sort of struggle or something going on, a lot of times the struggle is a power struggle, right? And a lot of times that struggle is between leadership, often new leadership, like a new president or a new chancellor who's come in with their own set of ideals or goals or visions. And they're supported, by a board, right? A board of directors or whatever type of board that they have behind that leader. And then on the other hand, you often have an entrenched set of faculty who have been there for a long time, who know everything, right? They know the institution, they know their students better than anybody else, they know what works for their students, they know what isn't going to work for their students, they know the way that things always have been done, and they know the way that they should be done going forward, right? So I'm going to oversimplify it, and I'm going to say that your institution has 2 sources of power, right? One is the power of leadership, and the other is the power of your shared governance or your democratic partner or whatever body governs, typically academics in the institution, right? Do you have a faculty senate, for example, and that faculty senate has representatives from the overall faculty body? How does that governance or that structure work? And then once I recognize where are the power centers in that college, then I ask myself, what's the power balance, right? It has everything to do with this group. It has everything to do with the faculty, senate, or governing body, and looking at their charter and their minutes from their meetings and asking, is this a group with power to make decisions? And if it is the group with power to make decisions, how does that interplay with leadership? Does this group's decisions override leadership? Does it contrast with leadership? Is there a collaborative process? Or is this group symbolic and they have their meetings and they make suggestions and do whatever, and then this group can ignore or move forward or do which alienates that group? And then the next thing that I want to know is this leadership, right? Are they operating unilaterally without input from whatever shared governance or a model that they may have? Are they getting buy-in with the decisions that they make going forward? Are they charismatic, and because they're charismatic they can win people over to their vision? Are they not charismatic, so that no matter what their vision might be, by coming in and stepping on people's toes, they're predetermining that they're going to fail or at the very least struggle? So where are those power centers, and then what are the barriers to collaboration with those 2 power centers? I love walking on a campus where you've got a president who is laid back, who's conversational, who is personable, who talks to the faculty, who talks to the students, and maybe even eats in the cafeteria once in a while, as opposed to other models that I've seen of president. Like I've seen the presidential model where the president is like unto a demigod that is in a lofty office and everyone speaks of in hushed tones because they hold them up on a pedestal, and they have a lot of respect and awe maybe for that person, if not that position, but there's still not a lot of collaboration, and usually there's not a lot of movement going in a situation like that. And boy, is it fun when that person retires to the next person that has to come in. Then you have the dynamically charged leader who comes in. They're all excited and raring to go because they won their job, their dream job. They're now president of XYZ college, and they say, I've got a bold decree and a bold vision for the future of this college and university, and we're going to go from 4,000 to 10,000 students in the next 3 years, and we're going to go, from 2,000 online students to 8,000 online students in the next 3 years, and that's going to be the future of our college. And then end of story. They've launched their vision, they've said what it's going to be, but they don't put a plan in place to say this is how we're going to achieve this. This is our strategic action plan. And this is the role that faculty or staff or anyone has in the decision-making process going forward. Okay, so thinking about that, when you're thinking about implementing democratic partnerships and shared governance, I want you to think about how much power should be in each house. If you're thinking about our federal government as a three-ring government, right? You got your legislative, executive, and judicial branches, and each have checks and balances. I tend to see colleges as being more a bicameral or a two-house power structure where you have administrative or leadership power, and then you have the conglomerate power of whatever faculty body or faculty senate you have. And then it's just that question of, so how do you define or how do you determine the balance between the two? And how much power do you really put into either house? So that being said, that's all I have for you right now. I am going to get in, and I will be doing some evaluating or just some scoring of your, honestly, if you're just participating in good faith in your discussions and you're not just saying, hey, good post, I totally agree. I'm pretty easy. I'm not here to evaluate, to judge your thought processes and to judge your, how right or how wrong you are about these things. I just want to see that you're active, that you're involved, that you're engaged, that you're interested, and that you are most importantly learning. So, okay, have a great week. I'm going to look at that survey when I get a chance and see if we can find a time to have a live online meeting. If you haven't done it yet, it's in the announcements. You should have got an email. Just let me know kind of what are good times to work for you. I'd like to have at least one live meeting to talk through some things. So, very good. Have a great week.